Hi, Emanuele. How's it going?
Hello. Hi, good talking to you.
So I would say for the start, can you just introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Emanuele Baldacci. I work for the European Commission in the IT department called DG Digit, and I'm a director responsible for digital services, which covers innovation in new technologies, data services, and also the development of reusable solutions, agnostic solutions for public administrations in Europe.
Cool. So what does it mean in concrete? What does your organization or you as a person do on a daily basis or as a long-term goals?
Oh, a lot of interesting things. First of all, let's say as an organization, the IT department is responsible for the digital transformation of our organization, which is the European Commission. So, in that sense, we are like a digital agency in a national public administration. We coordinate several efforts related to upgrading the technology capabilities to deliver better business models. And in particular, in my department, in my directorate, we are responsible for several important strategic files. I would mention three. The first one is the implementation of the data strategy. This is an approach that it's transforming our organization so that it can harness the benefits of data and the power of data to make better decisions and to manage processes in a more effective way. We have recognized that the data ecosystem, as in any other organization, is challenged by the existence of silos. And we are removing these silos because we want to exploit the potential of connecting the dots between different data sets and different data sources and building services that are using intelligence to extract signals out of the data. And signals could be in terms of data classification, for example, coming up with a summarized version of the data that makes still a lot of sense, or extracting causal relations, foresight, predictive analytics, and then applying all these capabilities to different things from case management, which is a typical duty or task in several public administrations, to help design policies better in different policy domains. First, understanding what the issues at stake are, designing the policy interventions, and then measuring the ex ante impact, so the potential expected impact of the intervention, and eventually also the realization. So that's first big priority. The big challenge there is to let's say, move out of a legacy organization of the data and also a culture about the data, which does not support the share and reuse of the data assets, towards an organizational culture and a technology-based infrastructure that makes this much easier for different users. The second big thing, sorry, go ahead.
So how far is your reach? Like, are you is there a certain stop where, like, or are you responsible for all departments in the EU and also for the local level, or is there a certain stop, a certain border where you're not responsible anymore, or you have no influence anymore?
Well, I'm responsible, and my department is responsible for the implementation of these data capabilities within the European Commission.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, I'm playing the role that colleagues in the member states at regional level, country level, municipalities level play in creating the similar capability for their organization and eventually for the citizens. In terms of the competences between what the European Commission does and what the member states do, this is an area where there is, I would say, collaboration, where member states are responsible for setting up their own data infrastructure and their own data services, but we don't want to reinvent 28 wheels.
Yeah.
We want to be able to reuse and learn from each other. So typically the technologies that are powering these services are based on reusable and domain agnostic techniques.
Yeah.
Support in addition to open standards, the possibility of reusing across different territories and different organizations a similar architecture, and also in many cases the same services. We also provide to member states, to the countries, data analytics services. So, for example, we have developed through a EU program called the Connected Europe Facility, a service called the Big Data Test Infrastructure. This is a cloud-based testing place, virtual space, where teams from government organizations in the member states can have access to the toolings and the computational capabilities to perform analytics tasks on huge amounts of data and test new models, new applications. And they can do that without having to create an infrastructure or access the technology. So there is a very user-friendly environment that they can access and that we manage for them as a service.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So I interrupted you. What else for big points next to the?
Okay, so that was the first big priority. The second interesting priority that we have in terms of our work program relates to creating what we call the building blocks that are used to deliver digital services in member states.
Yeah.
So each government digital service platform is carrying out several functions, and some of these functions are the same independently of what or where the platform is, so in which country or in which organization the platform is, and also what is the domain in which the government services are provided. So, for example, basic services like identity and access management. So, providing a technology and a service that ensures that a person can identify himself or herself, authenticate to have access to certain information and perform certain tasks. Trust services, so the ability to sign digitally in an equivalent mode, including from a legal standpoint, to ink on paper, but also other capabilities like exchanging messages or data securely from one point to another. So these are basic ingredients, if you want, of a government service platform. And again, instead of reinventing this millions of times across regional governments, municipalities, different departments in a government, we develop together with the member states and on the basis of open standards, which are mature and consolidated, the technology solution that can be adapted with very limited extra cost in the different national contexts. So we call this building blocks because they resemble Lego blocks.
Yeah.
They are interoperable by design. You can use them in different contexts, and by assembling them in a different sequence, you can build different types of digital services. So my directorate is responsible for the implementation of these building blocks and also for managing the service, so providing the assistance and the support to member states when they want to use these building blocks and deploy them in the context of their platforms. And we also work with private sector because some of these building blocks are powering potentially private sector applications.
Yeah. And
that it's a good thing because it ensures that the generic standards which are underpinning the government services are also, let's say, reused in the private sector application that ensures interoperability between these services.
Yeah, and it strengthens the technology competence of the EU and like the positioning. Do you know how many member states using blocks of them or planning to use blocks?
All of them are using at least some of these building blocks. because the building blocks are already a key component of what we call trans-European systems. These are IT systems that support different policy domains. For example, in the domain of justice, there are platforms that support the secure exchange of information between the national authorities and the department in the European Commission responsible for the justice sector. And these systems, the IT systems that are supporting this exchange and the services that come with this, are based on some of the building blocks that I was mentioning. Another building block that is widely used is the automatic translation. We call it e-translation, and it's deployed in several systems to generate in multiple languages content on basically timely basis, so that again, you do not have to either rely on third-party platforms to do the job, or have to develop your own application to translate automatically document.
Yeah. Did you publish the code? Like, is it what you did open source?
This whenever there is a code, the generic code is typically published. If not, the specifications are the technical specifications, and the standards, which are typically over standards, are also made available and published. In fact, we are supporting in the development of communities that are continuously enriching these standards and we support also in some cases with initiatives like awards or grants, the reuse of the standard for different applications, including in the private sector.
Yeah, I can imagine that like this is one of the biggest challenge, that to make sure that everyone which could be interested in what you do knows about you. I was on a big IT conference, a big hacker conference, the biggest hacker conference in Europe. It's called Chaos Communication Congress, and they're like quite big into open source and like about into technology, and they're like also they're a little meetup of all people interested into governmental digitalization of government, and they talked about like they would need a list of open source software which would be able to use in Germany on all department levels, and had discussions, and but nobody did know what you guys did, and they would be quite interested to know about that, because they would the guys which first are able to take this in consideration, that it's getting used in future developments and getting introduced, and also to build on the stuff. Like Open Knowledge Foundation is one of the organizations which are really close to this whole field. So
yeah, so that's a very good point. I mean, we have initiatives that we are supporting under what would have been the third of the areas in which my department is involved, and this is a program called ISA Square. It's a program that supports with financial assistance the development of interoperability solutions. And one of the work streams in this program is an activity that supports open source communities and reuse and solutions communities and activities. The program, for example, supports a platform that is called Join Up. That is a platform that hosts not only the solutions that are offered by the European Commission, but also solutions developed by other member states. And that platform and the activities around the community of the open source observatory that is funded under this program are supporting a dialogue with different open source communities. Now, that doesn't mean that everything that is in the government domain is fully and transparently open, for a variety of reasons, from technical to legal to organizational reasons. But we are strongly promoting the more transparency and more reusability in investments done in the public sector in Europe on technology. And here, I think that one important investment is also needed in not only providing, let's say, the basic data about the code, but also the right metadata so that the code and the different code lists, if you want, can be searched, discovered, analyzed in a more harmonized way. Those countries that have invested more into, let's say, providing more information to the general public about the portfolio have also started to look increasingly into that, how to document and explain and describe the type of code that they have out.
Especially if you have a lot of data in like most countries, or there is a lot of data in this world, so it's way harder. Like it's way more important to sort them and make it findable, so and make it through that usable. I'm guessing your organization is quite big, or like your department is also quite big. How do you think about like leading them in the right direction? Is it really hierarchy, or do you try to motivate people to be more self controlled, more agile? How it's said. How do you think about that?
I think we are transitioning towards, let's say, a more modern way of doing business. But as many other public administrations, we are still a relatively traditional organization in the sense that most of the processes are vertical processes. However, there are some big initiatives supported from the top that are spurring a culture of collaboration, and these initiatives are compounded by the increasing availability of tools that are supporting the co-creation of content. So I would say that the ambition is to transition very fast into an organization that is prevailingly based on methods of collaboration and cooperation and knowledge sharing as by design, but we are in a transition. Now, in the IT domain, for cultural reasons and because the industry has been moving for several years now into using methodologies that, for example, are based on agility, based on collaboration across teams, integrating various functions, including the development, the operations, and the security aspects of, let's say, IT activities. This type of, let's say, model is much more advanced. So Agile, for example, is a typical methodology, or various Agile methodology are used in the development factory of our DG. But again, if you think in a more radical terms, in terms, for example, of creating a data science capability and having the ability of different teams to integrate competences in a seamless way, that's still not fully there yet. And we are still a mix of very horizontal organization for projects, for collaboration activities, but at some points we are still, let's say, in the traditional bureaucratic organization mode, and I've been working in national organizations and international organizations and transitioning fully into, let's say, a more modern way of working. It takes some time and a push from the top, but also a cultural adjustment, and one would need to do this without rocking the boat, because there are some reasons why bureaucracies are organized the way they are. Hierarchy in some cases allows fast decisions or difficult decisions to be made. But at the same time, as you hinted, the speed at which the business needs are coming and providing, let's say, pressure on the solution provider or digital transformation agencies, and the availability of solutions on the market that are non-traditional, for example, software as a service solutions, cloud-based solutions, changes dramatically the way a traditional IT organization works, and push you to move towards these different methodologies to develop.
Do you have a direct example how you started to try to start with the cultural change? Like, do you for example, one team started to work in this way, or you said we would like to have a Ask Me Anything session each month or something. You have a practical example?
Yeah, we had several initiatives, including, let's say, all guided by the desire to do two things. First of all, ensure that teams would work across silos.
Yeah.
Second, to generate ideas bottom up. And I would say also the need to scale in a context of ever increasing pressure in terms of resources and high demands. So that we are generating synergies across different activity streams. So one example of, let's say, this collaboration is the DevSecOps initiative, which is underpinning the transformation of our business model and the business model in the IT. Originally, this was done as a separate blocks. We had our security colleagues, the infrastructure people, and the development factory. And they were working in sequence. And then, obviously, this had several shortcomings. So the approach and the methodology was started for some big projects, big transformational projects that were also a lighthouse type of project, meaning that they were influencing the way things were done in other corners of the house. So in that case, we were starting from something big and potentially also challenging, and we deployed the more adequate and modern methodologies in some flagships with the intention of industrializing them, the approach to the rest of the house. There's been other approaches which were starting more from the bottom, if you want, and we launched a new stream of initiative under the name of co-innovation initiatives, where we were brainstorming together with business and other IT solution providers within our organizations to federate, let's say, responses to needs and create a portfolio of very agile experiments that would be open and closed in a very limited time, that would continuously generate lessons for either building something, procuring something, or let's say scrapping an idea that was very bad. That was particularly hinted at, let's say, addressing the challenge of the very big monolithic traditional IT project that started with all the information available at the beginning. They lasted for many years, but then in the meantime, needs change, context changes, and you're building something that is for yesterday and not for tomorrow. So we were trying to adapt the business model that was created through a group of volunteers at the beginning and then scaled across the organization, and will now be concretely materialized also in the creation of some innovation labs that will be also physical places where this design thinking methodologies and agile experimentation could take place. There's also been more traditional ways of brainstorming about the way we work by, let's say, constantly creating opportunities for discussions, meeting, let's say, matching the business and the IT side of the organization and forcing them to, let's say, speak the same language through different techniques and different approaches.
Yeah, I asked because most interestingly, I had a conversation last year with one person working in your organization, and it was about like how to handle data and how to collect data from different member states and how to handle certain problems. I was just saying, yeah, okay, why you don't make this contacts and ask these people and go from there? And she said, no, I can't really decide it. I can just give it to my boss, and probably he says he's too busy. And I said, okay, why you don't go to the other boss, like the above it? And he said, no, I can't just enter the office there and tell them about this idea. Personally, she liked my idea. She liked, on her position, on her view, she liked this idea. But she was kind of like kind of in this kept in the structure. And most interestingly, I told her that I was trying to get the podcast with you, and it turns out that you are her biggest boss. Like you are the top of
I'm the one who was stopping the things.
the top of the pack. So no, you're not stopping, but because of course you could say I have always an open door, and people could get in with ideas. But if you have a 2,000 people organization, like probably you never get to work. So how do you think about it? Do you have an idea how to solve this, or is it just backed into a big organization? And
no, I think you need to address this issue. You cannot hide behind the difficulty that, it's public sector and there are the wrong incentives, or we are trapped into our organizations, or it's we are too big to make a change in a lifetime. You need some strategic persistence in making sure that some of the initiatives that you have, let's say, put in place will gain momentum, and they're also transformational in the sense that people start behaving a different way. You need a lot of coaching and teaching and providing opportunities for people to work in a different way. So, for example, what I found particularly useful in different contexts is to use hackathons or hackathons type of working together, because once you have gone through such an experience, you will not go back to the old way of working, or at least you will be in a position to challenge it, because you have seen that you can also do it in a different way. Now, again, to gain momentum, these things have to be, first of all, nurtured. They should not be seen as corners. That's why having, let's say, these things labeled as pure research or innovation and not part of the mainstream or core part of the organization, it's probably practically easy to do, but strategically not a very good idea in my view, because you are creating nice isolated islands that are not contaminated with the rest of the house. However, again, the pace at which the big organizations move sometimes is not fast enough. So you need to also launch some flagships, I think, and show that if you are brave enough to apply these new methodologies in areas that are not, let's say, low risk, but they're really the main business, or where the organization is losing the face in case you're failing, I think that you are proving that you are serious about transforming the way of work. Then I would say also the personal example, although it cannot be the only factor, but the personal example of the top managers, the middle managers, and down the road, let's say for the whole chain, it's very, very important. So we also need to take initiatives at all levels, and this is a message that we've been passing consistently in, let's say, in the IT department of the Commission. Take initiative, challenge the rules in some cases, and be heard.
Yeah, makes sense. Now I have probably a kind of unusual question. What would need a young person to do to become a director in the EU?
Well, first of all, I would say a strong interest in the EU project, and particularly in if you mean by EU the European Commission or the European institutions. I would say commitment is very important, because let's say we work on a project that has constantly challenged. It's difficult. We cannot hide behind that. So let's say there may be easier spots where one could work. You also need to be a civil servant, or at least be willing to contribute for part of your life as a civil servant, because we are not in this position for profit. We are a non-profit organization, and that also dictates some of the approaches that we are taking. The risk analysis is done differently from private sector for obvious reasons, and also the way we evaluate and define success is also different. So we don't have a bottom line. We still need to be efficient and effective, but we also want to measure results in terms of the value that our activities bring. Then I would say in today's organization, particularly for the European Commission, having, let's say, the ability to accumulate experiences, not necessarily only within the organization, but also in different parts of the labor market and across different domains. proving fungibility and ability to deal not only with the technical problems, but also with the political issues related to the work that we are doing. It's equality. Communication is increasingly a must for everyone, not just for directors, everyone working on an organization. And then I would say, obviously, as a managerial position, you also need to have, let's say, experienced yourself and shown that you can carry out different types of projects, be small, innovative, traditional, with a similar track record of success, be able to lead transformation, but also be willing and able to make sure that not only the most innovative part of the house is following you, but that you are, let's say, taking care of also those parts of the staff that, for example, are less interested in changing things and less motivated or less skilled, and that you move everyone, maybe not at the same pace, but move everyone forward. And we are a people organization, so people-to-people skills are increasingly important, but I wouldn't say this is exclusively a competence for the European Commission. So, in the end, my view is that if you are a young person and look into, let's say, a career that would lead you to a managerial post in an organization like the Commission, the best way is to keep your width of experience and build a track record that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be working in the same organization forever. That, I think, it's something that increasingly will be the terms of reference for managerial positions, let's say, in any public organization. Blending experiences, blending competences, having the ability to work in different environments.
Yeah, makes sense. So what are your favorite books?
Oh, I have many. If you think about known professional books, I like a lot history, and the Roman history in particular. So I would say Gibbon's The Decline of the Roman Empire, which is a very old book. It's centuries old, but it's still a reference manual. And I would say there are lessons for any big organizations there. As the ancient Roman Empire was at one point dominating the world and seeing in the eyes of their own rulers something that would never end. In the end, they were building already, let's say, the elements and the weaknesses that would lead to a fall and decline. And I think that this is a lesson for any big organization, political organization, but also economic organization. You grow, and you seem that you are at the peak, and you can continue expanding, and you are growing your weaknesses because of some, let's say, inherent vulnerabilities that you are not addressing earlier. Not easy to see these things coming, and we have, let's say, several experiences, including in business, of very successful organizations failing just because they haven't seen the change in the landscape coming up. So having a vision, foresight, ability to think out of the box, these are all things that would help you survive.
Cool. And my last question is, if you could go back in time to your 18 or 20-year-old self, what would you tell yourself?
So comparing, let's say, myself to versus...
you go to in a time back machine and you meet your 18-year-old self for 5 minutes. What would you tell him?
I think the 18-year-old self would say, wow, I would never think I could land there. And my today's self would probably be a bit jealous of the different roads open that you have when you are 18 and 20, which is a good thing to have. I think at any age, I would say, but definitely when you are 18. So don't lock yourself early on into something and explore the world.
Cool. Would you say something differently to your 20 and then to your 30-year-old self?
No, probably not. I don't see a big difference in today's world, for the good or the worse, between the the 20s and the 30s. That's the way I see it, at least.
Okay,
but
cool.
Let's say what I know is that this is your most productive time of your life, and I'm coming from a research background, and it's proven that let's say you build on in the subsequent phases of your career on the efforts and investment in terms of knowledge that you've made, even scientifically, in this very early year. So use the time effectively, because this is the time when you are really able to produce new things and novel things. Then you can consolidate and add experience on top of this to make this available to others. But I would say to myself, use the time effectively as well.
Cool. Thank you very much, Emanuele.
Thank you. Pleasure to talk to you.